Speak to our correspondent in London, Olly Barratt. Good evening to you, Olly. So Dominic Raab talking of a new reality in Afghanistan. What does he mean exactly?
Yeah, the Foreign Secretary saying that that's exactly what the world now needs to face. The Taliban are in control of the country. The foreign troops have left. Dominic Raab saying that he does believe that the West can put together alliances that can have what he calls a moderating influence on the Taliban. Well, people who followed that group's activities over the years will be very much waiting and seeing whether that is indeed possible. Dominic Raab saying he'll make sure the Taliban is held to its pledge of safe passage for those who do still want to leave the country. And Dominic Raab also talking about more widely international relations, the effect on that of all of this. He says the UK can try and work to get wider buy-in from China, Russia and countries in Central Asia to be that potential moderating influence on the Taliban. So you can see that it's not just from the UK's perspective about dealing directly with the group that is now in charge of Afghanistan and what is happening there, but it's also about trying to work alliances and relations with countries that aren't particularly good at the moment to try and make sure that the Taliban doesn't become the group that used to run the country and does indeed live up to some of the more moderate pledges they've been making since they marched on Kabul.
Yeah, so the whole issue of safe passage, of course, is such an important one. Could you tell us how many British citizens are remaining in Afghanistan, British citizens who want to leave, and what is the status of people who've worked with Britain, who may be from Afghanistan but want to leave? Are they going to be blocked, or is it unclear?
I can't give you an exact number, Sally, because even the Foreign Secretary himself doesn't have one. Dominic Raab says that at the moment it is thought that Brits who are there and wanted to get out or still want to get out of Afghanistan are numbered in what he describes as the low hundreds. He does say that over the recent period of weeks in which the evacuations were already taking place, and then when they really sped up as the Taliban approached the capital in Afghanistan, he says that 17,000 people have been got out by Britain in that time alone. So he's trying to paint a picture here of the vast majority of people having already made it out who wanted to. There are, though, also those Afghans who've been working with British forces in recent years, many of whom still want to get out. And Dominic Raab saying that Britain will keep its commitments to those people, but he's also saying that with an airport that's not really functioning in Kabul and with real uncertainty about exactly how the Taliban are going to behave towards some of those people who worked for international forces in the country over the last 2 decades, that it's very clear that for many of those people who need to get out, they'll need to do so via another country, heading to the border. And he says Britain is in contact with Afghanistan's neighbours to make sure that when and if that does happen, that Britain can help those people who make it to that point from there.
The 31st of August, of course, is the deadline set down by the United States. Talk to me about relationships between the US and the UK and whether they've worsened over this withdrawal process.
Absolutely they have. Relations are in a very tricky place at the moment for a number of reasons. The UK made it very clear it wanted what it called a conditions-led, not a time-led withdrawal from international forces from Afghanistan. And what it means by that is that it thinks the Americans got the timing wrong here. There's also real concern in the UK that Britain doesn't seem to have been consulted very much about the whole process, diplomatically or militarily. They simply had to go along with what the Americans were planning. Now, Britain knows its status in the so-called special relationship between the UK and the US. The US will normally go ahead and do what it wants in the American interest, and Britain normally backs it up and supports it. But I think there is a feeling in London that relations have been damaged by the way this has been handled and that level of consultation between London and Washington. We also saw Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, finding it very hard to get Joe Biden on the phone over that weekend when Kabul fell. And then in the last few days, we've had had an incident, that terrorist attack last week that claimed lives at Kabul airport. Reports coming from Washington that there was some anger on the American side that Britain had asked for a gate to be kept open so its evacuations could keep going, and the suggestion that that maybe put American lives at risk. That has been firmly rejected here in London today. Downing Street and Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab saying that is simply not how things played out. But it's just added to the tensions, really, between these two very old and normally very, very close allies.
Thank you so much. That's our correspondent in London, Olly Barratt. Now,